Mark Schlereth is here. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing great. Seahawks have won 3 in a row. How about that?
I know, crazy, right?
Did you? I know you have to work on Sunday, so I don't know if you had a chance to go back and see that game against the Jets. It got off to a really ugly start, Mark. It looked like a disaster in the making, and they were able to pull it out, and the Jets ultimately became the Jets, and you see why they only have 3 wins. But anyway, did you get a chance to watch much of that at all?
No, I mean, I got a chance to watch the highlights. I didn't really get into that, but I did see the Leonard Williams pick six, which was glorious because it was almost identical to the pick six that Aaron Rodgers threw in London against the Minnesota Vikings when Van Ginkel took it back on the same zone drop type of thing. So that was glorious to watch Leonard Williams fly. What a big man moving that fast. That's just glorious. So I didn't get to see that. But ultimately, listen, one of the things that really starts to separate you as a good team is, when you can win an ugly game, when you can go out and not play very well and still find a way to win, those sometimes are the best kind of bring it all together type of games because a couple things happen. One, you get a win. So it's always nice to get a win. But the other thing is, from a coaching standpoint, a lot of coaching can get done, really good coaching, that you don't sometimes get in one of these really clean-looking wins, one of these big kind of blowout wins. And I know Seattle hasn't had a lot of blowout wins or any blowout wins, but you can still coach your guys up on a win like this. So you take them. They're hard to get, man. They are hard to get, and good for the Seattle Seahawks at first place in the West right now. And it looks like it really looks like they've got one team that they're going to have to contend with, and that's the Rams.
Yeah, it's, and I don't want to start, speculating on Coach of the Year, but as far as the adversity goes, I mean, like you said, Mark, that game on the road has started out as bad as it gets, and then they've had some adversity, especially the 2 inside linebackers. We were just talking about this. The center retires suddenly. I mean, it was pretty amazing how they bounced back amidst all of that sort of chaos, and it seems like that's kind of a Mike Macdonald thing. It comes from the top down, right?
Yeah, and finding the right guys. Sometimes it's about you go in with guys and they don't fit either schematically or personality-wise or whatever, and it's always better just to have guys that want to be there, guys that understand the vision, guys that want to play hard, guys that want to do it the right way. And so I love it when a team goes, hey, man, I'm not going to put up with this or I'm not going to battle this. It's not a battle I want to – I'm just going to get somebody else. And that's it. A lot of organizations just cannot do that. They cannot step away from a mistake. They end up taking a mistake and compounding it year over year over year instead of just going, hey, man, we made a mistake on a dude. Let's move on and let's try to solve it. Let's try to fix it. And so I really respect that because I think it's something that has to be done. And I think inside the organization, your team, the guys who play, the guys who people pay to go watch, because nobody pays to go watch a coach stand around his ass off. They just don't. They go to pay. They pay money to watch players play. And as a player, man, we all know the guys that we want around. We all know the guys that are all in. We all know who those dudes are. And when a coaching staff or an organization makes the right decision that way, man, it makes you feel pretty good about what you're doing as a team, and makes those wins just that much sweeter.
Mark, one of the things we've talked about all season long is the shortcomings of this offensive line, and it was on full display in this game because they were inside the Jets' 5-yard line up to the 1-yard line for 8 plays and could not punch it in. And ultimately, on the final 4th down, they took a 15-yard sack rather than having them start at the 1, worst case scenario. So, and you had a great quote the other day. I couldn't remember how you put it, but basically, I had was telling Dave, like, man, I'm kind of done blaming the players. They are who they are. It's up to the coaches to put these guys in a winning situation, to figure out, all right, they don't do this well, so let's do this. And you had talked about that, like basically saying, don't be mad at this guy because he blew it. Be mad at the coach that put him. Like, how did you term that?
Yeah, I said don't be surprised. Like, put a guy in a position to fail. Don't be surprised when he fails. You're the dumbass that put him there. Like,
yeah.
There it is.
They ask guys to do things they can't do. Like, hey, we're going to do this. By the way, you guys talk about the offensive line all the time. I just spent, I called the Carolina-Tampa game, and, I looked at Carolina's last 3 games. I always try to dig into the last 3 games each team played. Damian Lewis is a damn good player, and I'm thinking, why is he not a Seahawk anymore? Was he hurt? Did he not play well for you guys?
Not really.
What happened?
Well, he started off he was amazing as a rookie. And he even played a game at center, and then it just dropped off. And there was a couple of times, remember in the Niner game, his second year, where I'm like, what is he doing? I mean, yeah, it was kind of interesting. And they paid him a lot of money.
That feels like a coaching thing, Dave.
Yeah.
Because, technique-wise, his tracks and his steps and coming off the ball, he is playing. I just watched 3 games and it was like, damn.
Yeah.
That dude can play. And so
that hurts, Mark.
It does hurt. That does hurt, because while he was here, we were all going, what is this guy doing? Like, each year it got worse. Like, we were all excited after the rookie year, and as Dave said, it just each year got progressively worse, and then it was a no-brainer. Like, well, yeah, he's not going to be back here. You got to improve that spot, and they haven't. So it's maybe it was coaching. Obviously, he's hearing the right voice, perhaps. But at this point with the Seahawks line, do you just look at when their failures happen? Hey, Dave was talking about, hey, they can run the ball fairly well when they spread out, and Ken Walker's got room to move. But then when they get in these 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, as we saw 8 times in this game in one drive, and they couldn't punch it in, it's because everything's compacted and they can't move anybody. Dave's talking about, hey, it goes against the grain, but spread them out. Do whatever it is you do well, regardless of the field position.
Yeah, it's really interesting sometimes, and I've been fortunate that I get to talk to coaches all the time, and I get asked to do some consulting, or at least kind of give my opinion on things. And one of the things I always tell coaches, especially coaches that approach me about the run game and things they struggle with, and one of the pieces of advice I always give is find one thing you can do. Just give me one thing that you can do well, and just live in doing that one thing. And, you can window dress one play and make it look like 6, 7 different plays. But if you can just do that one thing and then you build off that one thing. So let's say, hey, man, we're going to run the crap out of tight zone. In the backside of tight zone, we use the same exact identical footwork that we use on the front side of power. And so now if you really become an expert at the tight zone cutback game, and you become an expert at executing that backside footwork that's involved, now all of a sudden, you know what? You're going to be an expert at running power, front side deuce block. And so if you can find that one thing that you do well and just live in that world and build some play action that marries perfectly to it, you can have some success without being really complex. And I think it's simpler than, I think we make it a lot more complicated than it truly is. And I think that's one of the keys. The teams that do it really well, most of them don't live in a real complex world. They make it look complex. There's an illusion of complexity, but it's pretty simple. And I'm a big believer in doing it that way. And then the other thing happens to be, and Dave will tell you this from a coaching standpoint, I have had so many coaches over the course of my career be like, hey, man, you got to stay lower. Yeah, hey, no kidding? I'm getting impaled. What other genius, advice do you have for me, dumbass? Right? You got to stay lower. And my thought process is always, well, how do you stay lower? Because if we're both about the same height and we're both coming off the ball and trying to short each other's necks, it's not like I'm coming off 8 inches lower than you. So leverage is a technique that's created from the ground up. It's foot over ankle over knee over hip. It's first step, second step in the ground while you make contact. Your step, your second step, and your hands and your hips have to all fire at once. And you create this low to high plane where you actually take the helmet of the defender through the roof, through the top of the stadium. And that's how leverage is created. It's not because I came off 8 inches lower than you. That doesn't even exist. That's stupid. But that's what you get coached. Hey, man, you got to be lower. Yeah, I got you. I get it. So, there's a lot that goes into it. That's why I always say it's the greatest skill there is in football, moving a man from point A to point B. And it's why it's really hard to play the position, and it's why it's so poorly played across the league for the most part, because there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of the coaching, to me, the nuance of the coaching that just doesn't get fulfilled.
Would you? I know a guy you took a lot of heat for is Russell Wilson, and we saw his game this week: 14 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. What are you seeing? Is he they asking him to do the right things? He's throwing short, he's throwing over the middle, he's going deep. But is he just hearing the right voice out there?
Yeah, he's playing really well. I think, one, just accepting your role and understanding what you can and can't do. But that offense is expanded. Like I put the passing charts up from week 7, the first game he played, where there was not one ball thrown in the middle of the football field. Not one. 0. Every completion was outside the numbers, and every attempt was outside the numbers. Deep, short, shallow, quick, whatever it was. And every week that passing chart's growing a little bit, to the point where last week it was probably evenly distributed between the hashes all the way out to the sideline. And so I think one is to understand and really take account for what you aren't. You're not Drew Brees. You're probably never going to be Drew Brees. But being Russell Wilson was plenty good when you adhered to that, right? When you understood. I mean, it's a valuable lesson for all of us. Like be who you are and be where you're at. And those are important, valuable lessons. And I think that's something that Russell, I'll give him a lot of credit for, critically looking at himself, because we can all say, well, you were wrong. Well, no, I wasn't. He was absolute dog doo for 2 years in Denver. He was as bad as you could be. I mean, it was awful. And he probably wasn't great at the end of his career in Seattle either, because he's trying to be something he's not. And so I'll give him a ton of credit, man. He's accepted his role of being what he is. And you know what? When he is playing that way, he's a legit quarterback. He's really good. And he's been really good for Pittsburgh, man. He was really good last week, and he's been really good pretty much since he took over that starting role. So, all the credit in the world. I'll give him all the credit in the world, but it doesn't take away. All of a sudden, it wasn't Sean Payton, or it wasn't Pete Carroll, it was Russ. He was garbage for a couple of years, and I think it's because he got out of character and decided he was going to be Tom Brady or Drew Brees or somebody of that nature, and he's not, and he's back to being Russ. And being Russ is hey man, that's good enough to get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Hey, there was an adventure that happened on kickoff and kickoff return for the Seahawks. And I'm just wondering what you see out of that play. We were talking about, Shenault, they end up cutting him because he had a fumble, and then they end up scoring a touchdown off of the kick there. But, we were talking about different types of players, maybe Tyler Lockett. I said DK Metcalf, talked about all kinds of different, opportunities there. But what do you think about that? Do you see anything like in the coverage or in some of those returns that you think can be exploited, and that, if you get the right guy back there, you can do some damage?
Well, I think anytime you return it, you've got those opportunities, and there's just guys that are special. There's just guys that see it, that set things up. And then I think the other thing, I used to have a special teams coach, in Wayne Sevier when I was in Washington. They always talked about the changing angles of returns and when you're blocking guys. And it's very much like when you're pass protecting. When you're in pass protection, your quarterback's in the middle of the pocket. There's a certain rush that you get from the defensive lineman. When that quarterback takes off, and like I can feel him take off. Why? Because it completely changes the direction that the defensive lineman takes. And so you have to be willing to understand how I'm going to adjust, how the feel of that, what it feels like, how do I adjust my body, and then ultimately how you got to let guys go. You can't grab them because then you're out there in space, and you get called for holding and all that stuff. But there's certain guys that just understand how to create those angles, how to set up blocks. And it's like great running backs. Great running backs, to me, when I watch a great running back, I can tell that guy understands who the free runner is, who's not accounted for in the blocking scheme, and how I can set up my blocks, how I can create leverage for my offensive linemen to have them basically block the second level for me based on my path and the way I take it and how I avoid the unblocked guys. So there's a lot. Like, I didn't play. I mean, I covered kickoffs for a little while as a rookie until I realized that the guys who actually play special teams are crazy, and I was way too smart for that. And so I basically quit. I was like, hey, if I have to make this team by running down on kickoff cover, then I'm going to find something else to do for a living because I'm not doing that. I am stupid, but I ain't crazy. Those dudes are insane.
Hey, let me ask you this before we let you go. As you might imagine, it's a rare occasion, rare day if Dave will look at a defensive player and say that was a dirty play, that was a cheap shot, and he didn't even really go there on this one. But I'm curious your take on that Azeez Al-Shaair shot on Trevor Lawrence, which I'm usually with Dave. I think this is a violent game, and this is how they marketed it for decades, and that's just kind of what comes with the territory. Having said that, this is one I looked at it, and yeah, it happens quick, but he came up with the forearm. He wasn't trying to wrap him up. He wasn't trying to hit him around the waist or anything. He brings the forearm up and smacks him right in the face with it. I thought it was a dirty shot. He got suspended for 3 games. I'm guessing you saw the replay, and if so, what was your takeaway on that?
My takeaway is don't run your quarterback. Your quarterback's a running back at that point. And if you want protection, then get your ass down. And don't threaten the first down marker.
Which he did. He slid.
Well, yeah, you slide after the defensive player already makes a commitment to hitting you, and he's second down and 7. You're standing on the first down line, and ultimately he kept his head out of it. Now his forearm hit him in the neck. I get it. It's a violent game, but to sit there and say, oh, it was malicious and he intended to hurt him. And it's not how, man, I'm just telling you, it's not how it works. When your dude's about to make a tackle and he's coming at you, and hey, man, they were 4 or 5 yards apart running full speed before Trevor decided, I better get down. Well, by the time he got down, you're going to take the extra 2 yards. It's like the quarterback on the sideline. Mahomes does it all the time. Mahomes gets on the sideline, acts like he's going to tiptoe out of bounds. The defensive player pulls up, and then he takes off for another 15 yards. I would knock his ass into oblivion and live with the 15-yard penalty. But at some point, why do we continue to let the quarterbacks do this? At some point, what are we doing, and what is Al-Shaair supposed to do? Listen, man, I understand that it's a violent game. It's part of what I love about this game. You know what? Most of you listening, and I'm going to piss you guys off, most of you weren't gifted enough athletically to play in the NFL. I get that. That's not your fault. That's just God-given ability, right? I didn't do anything to earn it. It was just God-given. But you know what is even a bigger deterrent to you playing? Balls. Most of you don't have the balls to play in the National Football League, and I don't want to legislate contact out of a contact sport. So get your ass down if you don't want to get hit. Don't call a running play on second down and 7 for your quarterback. How about that?
That's kind of what I thought where you'd go. You're making Dave proud.
Mark.
You're making Dave proud right now. I tell you what. Mark Schlereth, everybody, with us each and every week. He never misses. It's always gold. Mark, we appreciate you, my friend. Thanks so much. We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good. Be good.
There you go. There's Mark Schlereth, everybody.